Accustomed to my hometown, I was so shocked to see that I had to insert a pound into the shopping cart to use one. It wasn't until I dumbly asked the cashier how to check my cart back in during checkout that I learned that the coin machine actually returns your pound after returning it to the lock. She informed me that many stores in the country do this to prevent shoppers from stealing the carts. While reflecting on this notion, I realized how many stolen carts I see in my home state of Virginia and how crimes tend to reflect around the stolen carts. This helped me see that stores do face an issue with stolen carts, and I just never thought about it, thus helping me become more aware of the big picture of reality and released from the quote-unquote cave. With a week full of groceries, I noticed my cart filled up more quickly than usual due to the smaller size. At home, our grocery carts are much larger and deeper with more compartments, but here you only have one medium-sized compartment. This left me to question the macro and micro sociology behind this. First, I wondered whether the carts were made smaller due to the trend of smaller-sized portions in the stores, but I knocked that notion down when I realized that even for large families, you'd just have to buy more of the small portions and the cart would still fill up. Then, I wondered if this had anything to do with the average family size in Edinburgh compared to that of the United States. I decided to research this idea, and according to telegraph.co.uk, the average family size for the UK used to be relatively low at an average of 2.4 children per family. However, in recent years, the average amount of kids per family has been steadily increasing. This leaves me to question if grocery stores here will be forced to increase the size of their cart in the future due to such trends. Although this was a larger grocery store, one explanation behind this smaller size cart could be the location in the city. With a large number of grocery stores or markets every few blocks, people may only need to stop into grocery stores occasionally to pick up just what they need per night, whereas in the suburbs where I grew up, grocery store trips are generally once a week, so we purchase more groceries each trip.
At home, I will usually never get generic brand items. When it comes to shopping for items at home, we have a certain brand or brands that we buy for everything. My mom shaped me into doing this habit. I always figured she was older and wiser and knew best. However, the first time I went shopping, I was incredibly stressed when it came to buying food because I didn't know which brand to buy. Thankfully, they had some brands here that they also had at home. For the brands they didn't have, I found myself just buying the generic due to money, and I've learned that it tastes just as good. I learned a bit about myself on my grocery trips, such as the toolkit and the single story I have been told about generic brands and that certain brands are must-haves and non-negotiable. On top of this, I've learned a lot about the metric system and how to cook using it. Before coming to the UK, I never needed or wanted to know the metric system, but my view changed when my situation changed. Overall, this has been the most challenging part of life here and the most I've ever learned about myself.
This label really stood out to me because the store had actually completely covered up the United States' nutritional facts. At home, my family purchases candy from foreign countries, but never have I seen the nutritional facts completely covered up with the US label. This made me more aware of the United States' lack of care for the average American's health. Most of us will buy the product regardless of our understanding of the nutritional label. Thus, the United States doesn't put in the extra effort to convert the numbers to a way in which we will all understand them. Relating to sociology, this goes along with what Chimamanda Adichie said about how the single story isn't false, but rather it just isn't the full truth to the larger reality. The harsh reality that this picture made me realize is that the food industry is more dependent upon money than it is of Americans' physical health, which is sad considering the high rates of obesity we see.
One of the first observations I had was that their produce is significantly smaller than back home. At first, I just assumed that they weren't as good as the US at farming. I figured this from my single story of being told that the small fruit means it is not good. After researching, I found out that the UK bans the use of GMOs. This taught me a lot about their social structure and values of their society. Clearly, they value their citizens' health because the effects of GMOs are still in question. Because of this, their produce is significantly smaller. This picture shows Sainsbury's American food section. It's easy to say I interpreted the meaning out of it. I saw this aisle and felt they were making a joke out of my country, saying it was fat and unhealthy. Using the most unhealthy snacks my country sells and calling it American food made me angry because I didn't want people to be hearing this single story anymore. I'm an American and I haven't had half of these snacks. I used this aisle and interpreted it at the world laughing at America. Although this was an overreaction, it was still upsetting. When shopping in the grocery store, I noticed some brands looked similar or had similar names to those back home in the US. For example, the Walker's brand looks similar to the Lay's brand we have in the US. The Walker's brand also features similar products that the Lay's brand has. I figured they had some kind of correlation. According to the website called Chips and Crisp, I learned that Walker's was founded in 1948 but bought by Lay's in 1989, and Lay's decided to keep the name Walker's. This shows globalizations because Lay's probably felt Walker's was more marketable than the name Lay's because so many people had brand loyalty. Therefore, Lay's listened to the market of the UK's Walker versus the global market of Lay's. This most likely is also true with other brand labels that are slightly different from the US, such as Frosted Flakes or Frosties.
Upon checking out after my first grocery store experience here, I was shocked to find that you had to bring your own bags to take your groceries home in, unless you wanted to purchase plastic bags. Although the bags were only 5 pence, this number does add up. This makes sense to me, however, as I have noticed Edinburgh's regular patterns of being environmentally friendly. By adding this additional charge, customers are more likely to bring their own bags to save their money, thus reducing the stores' and the customers' carbon footprints. Although a sensitive subject in the U.S., at home and at school, I get my groceries from Giant and Food Lion, where the cashiers are always standing. They are not even given the option to sit down. Thus, I was quite surprised at checkout. After researching this, I learned that cashiers sitting at checkout is common in the UK and in EU, and even at some stores in the US. Yet, there have been multiple lawsuits in the US regarding this topic. In regards to macro sociology, this goes along with structural functionalism, as the role the cashier plays in the UK or EU differs greatly from the role they play in the US. One thing that took me by surprise during checkout was the fact that the grocers don't bother helping you bag your items. Their job is strictly to scan the barcode and collect the money from you for what you have purchased. At first, this offended me, as the cashier and I did not have a shared meaning of this interaction. I was accustomed to having the cashier or a bagger at the end of the conveyor belt placing my groceries in the bags, and then I would load them into my cart. This just goes to show the difference in customer service between the two countries. The bagger didn't mean to be rude to me. She was just doing her job, and I wasn't being slow or lazy when waiting for her to bag my groceries. I just simply did not know their system.